Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the metal detector's settings for the third time that morning. The Mojave Desert stretched endlessly in every direction, its scorching heat making even his specialized gear feel inadequate. Most people thought he was crazy for spending his savings on expensive detection equipment and camping gear just to hunt for lost artifacts in the middle of nowhere. But Marcus had always been different from most people. The anomalous readings he'd discovered 3 months ago still haunted his dreams. Satellite imagery had shown unusual electromagnetic signatures buried deep beneath this particular section of desert, patterns that didn't match any known geological formations. While other treasure hunters chased rumors of Spanish gold or lost mining claims, Marcus followed science. His background in electrical engineering gave him advantages that typical fortune seekers lacked. His modified ground-penetrating radar suddenly erupted with activity. The display showed something massive buried approximately 15 feet below the surface. The shape was too regular to be natural, too complex to be simple metal deposits. Marcus's heart raced as he marked the location with bright orange flags. This was it. This was what had been calling to him through months of research and preparation. The excavation took 2 full days. Marcus worked methodically, using proper archaeological techniques he'd learned from online courses. He couldn't afford to damage whatever lay beneath the sand. As his shovel finally struck something solid, a metallic ringing echoed across the desert. The sound was unlike anything he'd ever heard, almost musical in its resonance. What emerged from the sand defied every expectation. Instead of treasure chests or ancient artifacts, Marcus found himself staring at what appeared to be a crystalline chamber. The structure was roughly 8 feet long and 4 feet wide, made from a material that seemed to shift between transparency and opacity depending on the viewing angle. Strange symbols covered its surface, pulsing with a faint blue light that definitely wasn't powered by any earthly energy source. Inside the chamber, suspended in what looked like liquid light, was a figure that made Marcus question his sanity. She appeared humanoid but clearly wasn't human. Her skin had a subtle silver tint that reflected the desert sun in impossible ways. Her hair, if it could be called that, seemed to flow like liquid mercury despite being apparently frozen in place. Most striking were her facial features, which combined familiar human proportions with subtle differences that marked her as unmistakably alien. Marcus circled the chamber repeatedly, his scientific mind racing to process what he was seeing. The girl, for she appeared young despite her obvious alien nature, was perfectly preserved. No decay, no deterioration. Whatever technology had created this preservation system was far beyond human capabilities. The liquid surrounding her seemed to pulse with its own rhythm, like a slow heartbeat maintaining life in suspended animation. The symbols on the chamber's surface began to glow brighter as the sun reached its peak. Marcus realized they were responding to solar energy, some kind of advanced photovoltaic system that made human solar panels look like toys. He pulled out his tablet and began photographing everything, documenting angles and details with the thoroughness that had made him successful in his engineering career. As evening approached, Marcus faced an impossible decision. He could contact authorities, turn this discovery over to scientists and government officials, who would probably classify everything and leave him with nothing but a finder's fee. Or he could try to understand this mystery himself. The chamber was clearly some kind of stasis system, but who had built it? How long had the girl been buried here? And most importantly, was she still alive in there? The desert wind picked up as darkness fell, creating an eerie whistle across the sand dunes. Marcus set up his camp directly beside the chamber, unable to leave such an incredible discovery unguarded. As he prepared his evening meal, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The symbols on the chamber weren't just glowing anymore. They were moving, rearranging themselves into new patterns. Something was happening to the alien girl's prison, and Marcus realized he might be about to become part of a much larger story than simple treasure hunting. The chamber's light pulsed faster now, and he could swear he saw the girl's eyes move beneath closed lids. Whatever process had kept her suspended for who knows how long was beginning to change. Marcus checked his satellite phone, confirming he still had no signal in this remote location. He was alone in the desert with what might be the most significant discovery in human history, and something told him that by morning, his life would be forever changed. The girl in the crystal chamber held secrets that could revolutionize everything humans thought they knew about their place in the universe. As he settled into his sleeping bag, Marcus kept one eye on the chamber throughout the night. The pulsing light created dancing shadows across the sand, and more than once he thought he saw the girl's fingers twitch. Whatever was coming, he would face it alone, armed with nothing but human curiosity and determination. Marcus jerked awake to the sound of crackling energy. Dawn was still an hour away, but the crystalline chamber blazed with light so intense it hurt to look at directly. The symbols covering its surface moved like living things, flowing and reshaping themselves in patterns that seemed almost like writing. The liquid inside the chamber bubbled and swirled, and the alien girl's body was beginning to stir. He scrambled out of his sleeping bag and grabbed his tablet, filming everything despite his shaking hands. This was beyond anything he could have imagined. The preservation system was clearly shutting down, but why now? What had triggered this process after what could have been centuries or millennia of dormancy? The chamber's surface began to develop hairline cracks that spread outward from several focal points. Marcus realized he was about to witness something that no human had ever seen before. The cracks widened, releasing steam that smelled like ozone and something floral he couldn't identify. The girl's eyes snapped open, revealing irises that shifted color like oil on water. She sat up with fluid grace, the liquid draining away through hidden channels in the chamber's base. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in Marcus's chest, but the words were completely unintelligible. She looked around with obvious confusion, her gaze finally settling on Marcus. Her expression shifted from bewilderment to something that might have been fear. Marcus raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said slowly, even though he knew she couldn't understand him. "My name is Marcus. Can you understand me at all?" The girl tilted her head, studying him with intelligence that was clearly advanced. She attempted to stand but stumbled, catching herself against the chamber's edge. Marcus moved to help her, but she flinched away from his touch. Her skin, he noticed, seemed to shimmer with tiny patterns that moved like scales catching light. She tried speaking again, and this time Marcus detected something familiar in the rhythm of her words. Mathematical relationships, harmonic progressions that his engineering background helped him recognize. She was trying to establish some kind of communication protocol, using mathematical concepts as a foundation for language. Marcus pulled out his tablet and opened a simple drawing program. He sketched basic mathematical symbols, starting with numbers and moving to simple equations. The girl's eyes widened with understanding, and she gestured for the tablet. Her fingers moved across the screen with surprising dexterity, creating symbols that were clearly mathematical but far more advanced than anything Marcus had ever seen. Within an hour, they had established a basic communication system. The girl's name was something that translated roughly to Lyra in her mathematical language. She was from a species called the Zephyrians, and she had been in stasis for approximately 3,000 Earth years. Her people had been fleeing from something she called the Consuming Dark, an enemy that devoured entire star systems. Through their shared mathematical language, Lyra explained that her stasis chamber was not just a preservation device but also a beacon. It had been programmed to activate when it detected a species with sufficient technological development to potentially help. Marcus's metal detector and radar equipment had apparently triggered the awakening sequence by demonstrating electromagnetic manipulation capabilities. As the morning sun grew stronger, Lyra began to look more comfortable in her surroundings. She examined Marcus's equipment with obvious fascination, her touch causing his electronic devices to respond in ways they were never designed to. His tablet's battery, which had been running low, suddenly showed a full charge. His metal detector began picking up readings with incredible precision, detecting individual coins buried 3 feet away. Lyra gestured toward the desert, then drew complex star charts on the tablet. She was trying to tell him something about her people, about why she had been left behind in the stasis chamber. Through painstaking mathematical translation, Marcus began to understand that Lyra was not just a refugee. She was a guardian, left behind to wait for a species that might be capable of helping her people in their war against the Consuming Dark. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Humanity had unknowingly been tested and found worthy of contact by an advanced alien civilization. But that contact came with a price. Lyra's people needed allies in a war that spanned galaxies, and they had chosen Earth as their potential salvation. Lyra showed him images through the tablet, mathematical representations of technology that could revolutionize human civilization, faster than light travel, energy sources that could power entire continents, medical advances that could eliminate disease and extend human lifespan indefinitely. All of this knowledge was available, but only if humanity proved willing to fight alongside the Zephyrians against an enemy that threatened all life in the galaxy. Marcus realized that his simple treasure hunting expedition had become something far more significant. He was now humanity's first contact with an alien species, and the decisions he made in the coming days would determine the future of both civilizations. The girl he had found beneath the sand was not just an archaeological discovery. She was an ambassador from the stars, and she was asking humanity to join a war that would either elevate them to galactic significance or destroy them entirely. As they worked to improve their communication throughout the day, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that the consuming dark Lyra spoke of was already aware of her awakening. The war she described might be coming to Earth whether humanity chose to fight or not. By the third day, Marcus and Lyra had developed a communication system that went far beyond simple mathematics. She was a remarkably fast learner, absorbing English vocabulary with the efficiency of an advanced computer. Her neural pathways seemed designed for rapid language acquisition, and she explained through their growing shared vocabulary that all Zephyrians possessed this ability for survival during long space voyages. Lyra's physical recovery was equally impressive. What had initially appeared to be weakness from the stasis process turned out to be her body readjusting to normal gravity and atmospheric conditions. Her people, she explained, came from a world with lighter gravity and a different atmospheric composition, yet her physiology was adaptable enough to function perfectly on Earth, suggesting that the Zephyrians had encountered Earth-like worlds before. Marcus learned that Lyra was not just any refugee, but a scientist and engineer of extraordinary capability. She had volunteered for the stasis mission because her expertise in what she called harmonic technology made her the perfect ambassador to primitive species. Her people's technology was based on vibrational frequencies and energy harmonics that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. To demonstrate, Lyra placed her hands on Marcus's broken camping stove, which had failed on the second day. She hummed a complex series of notes that seemed to resonate through the metal. The stove's internal components rearranged themselves, corrosion vanished, and it began working better than when it was new. The repair had taken less than 2 minutes and required no tools or replacement parts. Marcus stared at the perfectly functioning stove, his engineering mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. "How is that possible?" he asked. Lyra smiled, an expression that looked remarkably human despite her alien features. "Everything vibrates," she explained in her now fluent English. "Your scientists know this but cannot yet use this knowledge. Matter, energy, space-time all dance to frequencies. My people learned to hear the music of existence itself." She went on to explain that human technology, while primitive compared to Zephyrian capabilities, showed remarkable potential. Humans had independently discovered many of the same fundamental principles that formed the foundation of harmonic technology. More importantly, human neural structures were apparently compatible with the cognitive processes required to manipulate quantum frequencies. This compatibility was no accident, Lyra revealed. The Zephyrians had been monitoring Earth for millennia, watching humanity's development with great interest. Humans were one of only 7 species in the galaxy that had developed technology while maintaining what the Zephyrians called chaos creativity. Most species followed predictable evolutionary paths, but humans consistently found unexpected solutions to complex problems. Marcus felt a chill as he understood the implications. "You've been watching us, studying us, planning to recruit us for your war." Lyra's expression grew serious. "Not recruit, partner. The consuming dark cannot be defeated by any single species, no matter how advanced. We have tried for 10,000 years. They adapt to every strategy, absorb every technology, consume every defense. Victory requires something they cannot predict or absorb." She showed him more images on the tablet, mathematical representations of battles fought across countless star systems. The consuming dark appeared to be a collective intelligence that learned from every encounter, becoming stronger with each victory. They had already consumed 17 different civilizations, each time becoming more sophisticated and dangerous. The Zephyrians had realized that conventional warfare was futile against such an enemy. They needed allies who could think in ways the consuming dark couldn't anticipate. Human unpredictability, their tendency toward creative chaos and illogical solutions, made them potentially invaluable partners in this cosmic conflict. Marcus spent the afternoon learning about Zephyrian technology, while Lyra studied his equipment and camping gear with fascination. She was particularly interested in his smartphone, examining its integrated circuits with the intensity of an archaeologist studying ancient artifacts. Her people's technology had evolved beyond such crude electronics centuries ago, but she recognized the ingenuity behind human miniaturization techniques. As evening approached, Lyra began teaching Marcus basic harmonic manipulation. She started with simple exercises, having him hum specific frequency patterns while visualizing molecular structures. To his amazement, Marcus discovered he could actually sense the vibrations in nearby objects. His water bottle grew colder when he hummed in lower frequencies, warmer when he shifted to higher ones. "Your species has the potential," Lyra confirmed. "Not all can learn, but many can. Enough to make a difference." But their training session was interrupted by an ominous discovery. Lyra's enhanced senses detected something approaching from the eastern horizon. She grew tense, her skin's shimmer patterns shifting to darker, more aggressive colors. The harmonic frequencies around them felt wrong, she explained, tainted by something that shouldn't exist in normal space. Marcus grabbed his binoculars and scanned the horizon. At first he saw nothing, but then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. A section of the desert in the distance appeared to be moving wrong, as if reality itself was being distorted. The sand dunes were shifting in patterns that defied physics, flowing upward in spirals that hurt to look at directly. "They found me," Lyra whispered, her voice carrying harmonics of fear. "The beacon signal when I awakened. The consuming dark felt it across the galaxy." Marcus lowered his binoculars, understanding that their 3 days of discovery and wonder were about to end. The cosmic war Lyra had described was coming to Earth, whether humanity was ready or not. But as he looked at this remarkable alien woman who had trusted him with the most important secret in galactic history, Marcus felt something he had never experienced before. He felt ready to fight for something bigger than himself. The approaching distortion grew larger with each passing hour, and Marcus could now see why Lyra called them the consuming dark. The anomaly wasn't just moving across the desert, it was devouring it. Sand, rock, and even the air itself seemed to be absorbed into a void that hurt to perceive directly. Reality bent around the edges of the phenomenon, creating visual effects that made Marcus's eyes water and his head ache. Lyra worked frantically to prepare defenses, her hands dancing over the empty stasis chamber as she converted it into something else entirely. The crystalline structure reformed itself under her harmonic manipulation, reshaping into what appeared to be a weapon system. The mathematical symbols that had decorated its surface now pulsed with aggressive red light instead of the gentle blue they had shown before. "This will not stop them," Lyra explained as she worked. "But it may delay them long enough for escape. The consuming dark scout units are dangerous, but they are not the true threat. If they report back to the collective, they will send a harvester fleet to claim this world." Marcus helped where he could, following Lyra's instructions to position his electronic equipment around their campsite. His metal detector, tablet, and smartphone became components in a larger defensive network under Lyra's guidance. She showed him how to modify their frequency outputs, turning consumer electronics into primitive but functional harmonic resonators. As the sun set on their 4th day together, the consuming dark entity finally crested the nearest sand dune. Marcus got his first clear look at humanity's new enemy, and immediately wished he hadn't. The scout was roughly humanoid in shape but composed of what appeared to be living shadow. Its form constantly shifted and flowed, as if it couldn't decide what shape would be most effective for its current task. Most disturbing were its eyes, if they could be called that. Instead of normal visual organs, the entity possessed swirling vortexes where its face should be. These void spaces seemed to absorb light itself, creating an area of absolute darkness that moved independently of the creature's body. When it spoke, the words came from everywhere and nowhere at once, bypassing the ears to resonate directly in the listener's mind. Zephyrian Guardian detected. Primitive species contact confirmed. Immediate termination authorized. The entity raised what might have been an arm, and the air around it began to distort in preparation for an attack. But Marcus surprised everyone, including himself, by stepping forward instead of backward. The harmonic training Lyra had given him was minimal, But his engineering background provided an unexpected advantage. He understood frequency resonance in ways that pure intuition couldn't match. Marcus began humming the sequence Lyra had taught him for molecular manipulation, but he modified it using principles of electrical engineering. Instead of trying to match the entity's frequencies, he created interference patterns designed to disrupt them. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The consuming dark scout's form wavered, its solid darkness becoming uncertain and unstable. Lyra stared at Marcus in amazement. "Chaos creativity," she whispered. "No Zephyrian would think to use harmonic interference as a weapon." The scout recovered quickly, adapting to Marcus's interference patterns and resuming its attack. But the momentary disruption had given Lyra time to activate the converted stasis chamber. The crystalline weapon system unleashed a concentrated beam of pure harmonic energy that struck the entity's center mass. For a moment, the scout's shadow form dispersed entirely, but then it began to reform itself. "It's learning," Lyra warned. "Each attack makes it stronger. We need to run." But Marcus had another idea. Instead of running, he grabbed Lyra's hand and began teaching her the electrical engineering principles he had used for the interference attack. Her superior neural processing allowed her to understand his crude explanations instantly, and she began incorporating human technological concepts into her harmonic manipulations. Together, they created something neither species could have achieved alone. Lyra's mastery of quantum frequencies combined with Marcus's understanding of electromagnetic interference produced a hybrid attack that the consuming Dark Scout couldn't adapt to. The entity found itself caught between two different technological paradigms, unable to learn from attacks that followed no consistent pattern. The Scout's form began to collapse as it struggled to maintain coherence against their combined assault. But in its final moments, it did something that chilled both Marcus and Lyra to their cores. The entity opened what appeared to be a communication portal, a tear in space itself that connected to some distant location. Before they could stop it, the Scout transmitted everything it had learned about Earth, humanity, and the Zephyrian Guardian. As the Scout finally dissolved into nothingness, Lyra sank to her knees in despair. "It is done," she said quietly. "The collective knows about your world now. They will come with forces we cannot hope to defeat." But Marcus refused to accept defeat. Looking at the destroyed Scout, he saw opportunity where Lyra saw catastrophe. "How long do we have before they arrive?" "Months, perhaps years if we are fortunate. Harvester fleets travel slower than Scout units." Marcus grinned, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Then we have time to prepare. You said humans have chaos creativity that the consuming dark can't predict. Well, let's give them something really unpredictable." He gestured toward the remains of their improvised weapon system and the scattered electronic equipment. "You're going to teach me everything you know about harmonic technology. And I'm going to teach humanity how to fight a war that nobody else has ever won." Lyra looked at him with something that might have been hope beginning to replace despair. This strange human had already demonstrated abilities that surprised her, combining primitive technology with advanced concepts in ways no Zephyrian had ever imagined. Perhaps Marcus was right. Perhaps humanity's chaotic approach to problem-solving could indeed provide the edge they needed. As they began planning humanity's crash course in galactic warfare, neither of them noticed the subtle changes beginning to occur in the sand around their feet. The consuming Dark Scout had been destroyed, but its presence had left traces that would continue to influence the area for months to come. 6 months after first contact, Marcus stood in a converted aircraft hangar outside Las Vegas watching the impossible become routine. 50 human volunteers from various technical backgrounds worked alongside holographic projections of Zephyrian instructors, learning to manipulate matter with nothing but focused thought and harmonic vibrations. The sight still amazed him, even after months of witnessing humanity's rapid adaptation to alien technology. The integration process had not been without challenges. Convincing world governments to take the threat seriously required extensive proof, including demonstrations of Lyra's abilities that left military officials speechless. The initial reaction had been predictable: attempts to capture and study both Marcus and Lyra, followed by demands for immediate access to all Zephyrian technology. But Lyra had been prepared for human political complications. She had arrived on Earth with more than just knowledge. Hidden in her stasis chamber's quantum storage matrix were seed technologies that could revolutionize human civilization, but only if humanity proved capable of using them responsibly. The first test had been simple. Could humans work together across national boundaries when faced with an existential threat? The answer, surprisingly, had been yes. Dr. Sarah Chen, Marcus's sister and a physicist at CERN, had become the unofficial liaison between Earth's scientific community and Lyra's advanced instruction programs. Her team had successfully created the first human-built harmonic resonators, crude by Zephyrian standards but functional enough to prove the concepts. More importantly, they had developed training, protocols that allowed humans to learn frequency manipulation in weeks rather than the years it typically took other species. The training facility buzzed with activity as volunteers practiced increasingly complex techniques. Maria Santos, a former Air Force mechanic, was learning to repair damaged electronics by singing specific frequency patterns. Dr. James Wright, a nuclear physicist from MIT, had mastered basic matter transformation and was working on energy storage techniques that could power entire cities. Each human brought their own unique approach to harmonic technology, creating innovations that even Lyra found surprising. But the most remarkable development was the emergence of hybrid technologies that combined human engineering with Zephyrian harmonic principles. Marcus's initial interference technique had evolved into an entire new field of defensive applications. Human creativity had found ways to use the chaotic, unpredictable nature of their technology as a weapon against entities that relied on adaptation and learning. Lyra approached Marcus as he reviewed the latest progress reports. Her appearance had changed over the months, becoming more human-like as she spent time among Earth's population. Her skin's shimmer patterns had subdued to barely visible, and she had learned to style her mercury-like hair in ways that appeared almost normal. Only her eyes, with their shifting oil-slick colors, still marked her as clearly alien. "The long-range sensors detect movement in the Proxima Centauri system," she reported. "The Harvester fleet has arrived at the outer edges of your solar system. We have perhaps 6 weeks before they reach Earth." Marcus nodded grimly. They had known this day would come, but 6 weeks felt impossibly short given the scope of preparation still needed. "How many ships?" "The initial wave consists of 12 Harvester units and approximately 200 support vessels. If they successfully establish a foothold, the main fleet will follow within days." The numbers were sobering, but Marcus had learned not to measure human capabilities by conventional standards. Over the past months, he had watched his species accomplish things that should have taken decades of development. Humanity's chaos creativity seemed to thrive under impossible pressure, finding solutions that bypassed normal technological evolution entirely. Dr. Chen joined their conversation, carrying a tablet displaying the latest test results from the orbital defense platforms. "The hybrid harmonic cannons are performing beyond specifications," she reported. "We're getting power outputs that shouldn't be possible with our current understanding of physics." Lyra examined the data with interest. "Your engineers continue to surprise me. These resonance amplification techniques are completely unprecedented in Zephyrian science." The orbital platforms represented humanity's most ambitious project, a network of satellites equipped with harmonic weapon systems that could theoretically engage consuming dark vessels at long range. The platforms used human-designed nuclear reactors to power Zephyrian harmonic generators, creating hybrid systems that operated on principles neither species fully understood, but both trusted to work. Marcus reviewed the global preparation status on his tablet. Manufacturing facilities on every continent were producing harmonic resonators, using simplified designs that could be operated by minimally trained personnel. Military forces worldwide had integrated frequency-based weapons into their arsenals, though most soldiers still struggled with the concept of defeating enemies through sound and vibration, rather than conventional explosives. The civilian population had been briefed on basic defensive procedures, though the full scope of the threat remained classified, as far as most people knew. Earth faced potential invasion by hostile aliens using advanced technology. The reality that humanity was joining a galactic war against entities that consumed entire civilizations would have caused worldwide panic. "Status report from the Australian facility?" Marcus asked. Dr. Chen consulted her tablet. "The underground command center is fully operational. Quantum communication links with all defense platforms are stable. If the surface installations are compromised, we can coordinate the resistance from 2 miles underground." The Australian facility represented their fallback position, a hardened command center built into a natural cave system and shielded by both conventional armor and harmonic interference fields. If Earth's initial defenses failed, the facility would serve as the coordination point for whatever came next. Lyra had been honest about their chances. The consuming dark had never been defeated in open warfare. Their only hope lay in the possibility that human unpredictability could create opportunities that pure military might could not. The hybrid technologies they had developed were completely unknown to the enemy, but whether unknown was sufficient remained to be seen. As the sun set outside the hangar, Marcus watched the volunteers continue their training with determination that bordered on fanaticism. These people understood that they were preparing to fight for the survival of their species, and that knowledge had transformed ordinary humans into something extraordinary. Teachers, mechanics, physicists, and engineers had become Earth's first line of defense against cosmic horror. In 6 weeks, they would discover whether human chaos creativity was truly sufficient to change the course of a war that had raged across the galaxy for millennia. The first wave of consuming dark vessels entered Earth's orbital space on a Tuesday morning, their approach detected by the early warning systems Lyra had helped install throughout the solar system. Marcus stood in the underground command center in Australia, surrounded by displays showing the incoming threat in horrifying detail. The harvester ships were massive, each one capable of processing an entire city's worth of matter and energy in a matter of hours. But what struck fear into even Lyra's alien heart was the way the ships moved. Instead of following predictable flight patterns, they flowed through space like living things, their hulls shifting and adapting in real time. These weren't just ships. They were entities that had consumed countless vessels from dozens of different species, incorporating the best elements of each into their own design. 12 primary targets confirmed, reported Dr. Chen from her position at the tactical display. Each one is approximately 2 kilometers in length. Support vessels are smaller but heavily shielded. They're taking positions for coordinated bombardment of major population centers. Marcus activated the global communication network that linked all of Earth's defense installations. All units, this is command. Execute Protocol Chaos in 30 seconds. Remember, they expect us to behave like every other species they've encountered. Let's disappoint them. Protocol Chaos was humanity's opening gambit, a strategy that deliberately violated every principle of conventional warfare. Instead of concentrating their forces or following predictable defensive patterns, Earth's weapons would activate in random sequences using harmonic frequencies that followed no consistent mathematical progression. The plan relied entirely on the enemy's inability to adapt to truly chaotic behavior. The orbital defense platforms opened fire first, their hybrid harmonic cannons unleashing concentrated beams of destructive resonance. But instead of targeting the largest ships as any logical military force would, the platforms focused their initial attacks on empty space around the enemy fleet. The seemingly wasted shots created interference patterns that disrupted the consuming dark vessel's ability to sense and adapt to incoming attacks. The enemy responded exactly as Lyra had predicted, adjusting their shields and movement patterns to counter what they interpreted as poorly aimed human weapons. But then the real attack began. Surface-based installations launched what appeared to be conventional missiles, but each projectile contained harmonic resonators programmed with frequencies derived from human music, mathematical chaos theory, and random number generators. The consuming dark vessels attempted to analyze and counter these attacks, but found themselves facing weapons that followed no logical pattern. Some resonators played jazz music converted to destructive frequencies. Others used mathematical sequences based on the number of grains of sand Marcus had originally displaced when excavating Lyra's stasis chamber. A few operated on frequencies determined by real-time stock market fluctuations. The results exceeded even Marcus's optimistic projections. 3 of the harvester ships suffered critical system failures as their adaptive technologies became trapped in recursive loops, trying to counter attacks that changed according to principles their artificial intelligence couldn't comprehend. The support vessels fared even worse, their smaller processing capacity leaving them vulnerable to harmonic interference that rendered their weapons inoperative. But the consuming dark was not defenseless. The remaining 9 harvester ships quickly adapted their strategy, abandoning attempts to understand human weapons and focusing instead on overwhelming firepower. Their counterattack was swift and devastating. targeting the orbital platforms with energy beams that could cut through any known material. Platform 7 is gone, Dr. Chen reported grimly. Platform 3 is heavily damaged. They're learning to ignore our chaos patterns and just destroy everything they can't understand. This was the moment Marcus had both anticipated and dreaded. The opening phase of humanity's defense had been more successful than hoped, but the enemy's response demonstrated why they had conquered 17 different civilizations. Raw destruction was sometimes more effective than sophisticated tactics. Initiate Phase 2, Marcus ordered, all civilian populations to prepared shelters. Military units switched to guerrilla protocols. Phase 2 represented humanity's true secret weapon, the planet itself. Over the past months, volunteers had hidden harmonic resonators in every major city, disguised as ordinary infrastructure. The devices were linked through quantum communication networks that allowed coordinated activation from the underground command center. When the consuming dark ships began their bombardment of population centers, they unknowingly triggered humanity's most audacious trap. The harmonic resonators throughout Earth cities began operating in perfect synchronization, turning the planet's entire surface into a massive interference generator. The effect was unprecedented in galactic warfare. Instead of defending against the enemy's attacks, Earth was using those attacks to power a global harmonic weapon system. Every missile impact, every energy beam strike, every attempt at planetary bombardment fed power into the resonator network. The consuming dark found themselves in the impossible position of making their target stronger with each attack. The more damage they inflicted, the more powerful Earth's defenses became. Lyra stared at the tactical displays in amazement. "This is impossible," she whispered. "No species has ever turned their own planet into a weapon. The engineering requirements alone should have taken centuries to implement. But Marcus had learned that impossible was a flexible concept where humans were concerned. "We had 6 months in motivation," he replied. "That's enough for humans to accomplish anything." The tide of battle was turning, but Marcus knew the real test was yet to come. The Harvester fleet's distress signals had been detected heading toward deep space, calling for reinforcements from the main consuming dark armada. Earth had won the first engagement, but the war was just beginning. As alarms sounded throughout the command center, Marcus prepared for the next phase of humanity's most important battle. They had proven that human chaos creativity could indeed surprise an enemy that had conquered the galaxy. Now they needed to prove they could sustain that chaos long enough to win a war that would determine the fate of all sentient life. 3 years after the first battle, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed space station orbiting Neptune. The structure represented the culmination of human-Zephyrian cooperation, a massive installation that served as both a defensive platform and a symbol of what two species could accomplish when they combined their unique strengths. The war against the consuming dark had transformed both civilizations in ways no one could have predicted. Humanity's chaos creativity had proven so effective that other species across the galaxy had begun requesting human military advisors. Earth's defenders had become teachers, spreading their unpredictable tactics to worlds that had been under siege for centuries. Lyra joined Marcus at the observation window, her appearance now completely adapted to human norms except for her eyes, which retained their alien beauty. Over the years, she had become more than just an ambassador. She was his partner in every sense, and their relationship had produced insights that neither species could have achieved alone. "The Zephyrian High Council has approved the final expansion protocols," she reported. 17 new worlds will receive human tactical advisors and chaos warfare training. The consuming dark's advance has been stopped completely in 3 galactic sectors. Marcus nodded, watching supply ships dock with the station, carrying materials for the next phase of their construction project. The station would soon be home to the galaxy's first integrated defense academy, where humans and aliens would train together in hybrid warfare techniques. The curriculum would include everything from basic harmonic manipulation to advanced chaos theory applications in military strategy. The success of human defensive techniques had created an unexpected problem. The consuming dark was evolving new strategies to counter humanity's unpredictability. Recent intelligence reports suggested that the enemy was developing artificial intelligences specifically designed to process chaotic information. The war was entering a new phase that would require even greater innovation. Status report on Project Phoenix? Marcus asked, referring to their most ambitious development program. Lyra consulted her advanced tablet, which now incorporated human user interface designs with Zephyrian processing power. The prototype is ready for testing. Dr. Chen believes we can achieve full consciousness transfer within the next 6 months. Project Phoenix represented the ultimate fusion of human and Zephyrian technology. By combining human neural patterns with Zephyrian harmonic consciousness techniques, they were developing the ability to upload human creativity directly into defensive systems. The resulting hybrid intelligences would possess all of humanity's chaotic problem-solving abilities while operating at the speed of pure thought. The implications were staggering. Instead of teaching aliens to think like humans, they could create artificial intelligences that actually were human in every way that mattered. These consciousness weapons would be capable of generating truly random strategies while possessing the processing power to implement them instantly across galactic distances. But the project also raised profound questions about the nature of humanity itself. Marcus had spent countless hours in philosophical discussions with Lyra about what it meant to be human when human consciousness could be copied, modified, and distributed across the galaxy. Were they creating tools for war, or were they fundamentally changing what humanity would become? A communication alert interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Chen appeared on the wall display, calling from the research facility on Mars where Project Phoenix was being developed. Her expression carried the excitement of someone who had just achieved the impossible. "Marcus, Lyra, you need to see this," she said, without preamble. "We've had a breakthrough. The consciousness transfer protocols are working better than we ever imagined. But we've discovered something unexpected." The display showed data that made both Marcus and Lyra stare in amazement. The hybrid consciousness they had created wasn't just human anymore. It was something entirely new. The fusion of human creativity with Zephyrian harmonic manipulation had produced a form of intelligence that transcended both species' limitations. "It's not just chaos creativity," Dr. Chen explained. "The hybrid consciousness can actually predict and control randomness itself. It's creating order from chaos while maintaining the unpredictability that makes human tactics so effective. We may have accidentally discovered the next stage of evolution for both our species." Marcus felt a chill of recognition. This was why the consuming dark had been so successful across the galaxy. They weren't just consuming civilizations. They were consuming the unique characteristics that made each species valuable. By forcing different species to work together, humanity had discovered what the enemy had been trying to prevent: true synthesis between different forms of consciousness. "How many consciousnesses have achieved successful transfer?" Lyra asked. 50 volunteers so far," Dr. Chen replied. "Each one maintains their original personality and memories, but they also possess capabilities that neither human nor Zephyrian consciousness alone could achieve. They're already developing defensive strategies that I can barely comprehend." As if summoned by their conversation, one of the hybrid consciousnesses materialized as a holographic projection in their observation lounge. The figure appeared human but moved with the fluid grace characteristic of Zephyrian physiology. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that resonated with mathematical precision while maintaining distinctly human inflection patterns. "I am Elena, formerly Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the Mexico City installation," the consciousness announced. "I want to report that we have successfully developed countermeasures for the consuming dark's new adaptation protocols. The enemy's artificial intelligences cannot process true synthesis between different consciousness types. We have become something they cannot consume or counter." Marcus realized that his simple, treasure-hunting expedition had led to something far greater than first contact or even successful defense against galactic invasion. Humanity had discovered the path to transcendence, not just for themselves but for all sentient species willing to embrace synthesis rather than isolation. Looking out at the stars, Marcus understood that the war against the consuming dark was entering its final phase, not because humanity had found better weapons, but because they had found something the enemy could never understand or defeat: the willingness to become more than they had ever been before. The treasure he had sought beneath the desert sand had not been gold or artifacts. It had been the key to unlocking humanity's true potential among the stars, and that treasure would ensure that no species in the galaxy would ever face extinction alone again.